Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of The Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to watch today's video and spending some time with me. And guys, we're going to be talking about frog fishing today and why you don't ever hear about it anymore. It's like frog fishing like 10 years ago, you used to hear about it constantly. It won a lot of tournaments and it sort of fell by the wayside. But guys, under the right situations, a frog is still awesome. At the time of filming this video, we're in the first week of April, so we're just getting into frog season now. So I want to give you guys some good tips and advice. So when you get those conditions that are lined up right, you can get some good fish on frogs here. Also, guys, I will link my frog selection and my tackle warehouse link in the description of this video. The one we're going to be talking about today is the megabass big gabot frog. In my opinion, this is the best frog that you can get here. We'll talk a little bit about it later in the video, but I'll put that link in the description there, so I really appreciate that. Okay, why don't you hear about frogs anymore? It's like a lot of you guys that have followed bass fishing and know a little bit about bass fishing, you've probably heard of Dean Rojas, who made frog fishing famous. He had a run back in the mid 2000s that was nothing short of incredible on the frog. I mean, he almost won the Bassmaster Classic on it. It was just a big deal. But over the last couple of years, you haven't heard that much about frog fishing. I think a lot of that is because spotlighting for bass has taken over. People are not fishing the shallow techniques like they used to, and the numbers of people. So it could be that. I mean, it could be a couple different things. But guys, when you get the right situations, a frog is just an outstanding lure to fish. So let's talk a little bit about what you want to look for here as far as, understanding a little bit about a frog, how to modify it a little bit, a little bit about the tackle with it. Now, there's a lot of different frogs on the market, and you basically have two different styles of frogs. You have what's called a popping frog, which, let's see if I can find one. I don't know if I have one in here. Yeah, here's one right here. You have a popping frog, which is just what it says. It's almost like a little popper. It's got a little concave side on it here, and it just chugs through the water and it goes bloop, bloop, bloop. And then you got a walking frog, which in my opinion is far superior, like the megabass big gabot, that walks side to side like a xerospook when you twitch it like that. That's what allows it to work in a diversity of conditions, because when you have a frog like the big gabot that walks side to side, you can not only fish it around targets like grass beds and whatever, but you can fish it in open water just like a topwater. You can throw a frog like this just on an open water point, same places you'd fish like a xerospook or something. So that's the two different styles. Now the popping frog, it might be better if you have some type of like throwing it in lily pads or some type of aquatic vegetation where you have just little openings. Sometimes that chugging motion can attract the fish, but I've caught so many more fish on a walking frog than anything else. In order to get the thing to walk though, one of the things, frogs are a little bit finicky, because if you say, for example, if you're walking a xerospook's pretty easy to get to walk to side. But on a frog, if you don't twitch the rod right and have the rod in the right position, it'll just scoot forward like that, and it won't have that wide side to side action. So what you need to do in order to get a frog to walk is, when you throw your frog out there, make sure that your rod tip is pointed at the water. You don't want your rod tip pointed at the bait. Point it straight down at the water and twitch it down like that. Go twitch, 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 twitch. Don't twitch it like sideways like that. Twitch it straight down. And when you twitch it straight down, it'll get that good walking action just like that. Takes a little bit of practice, because once you get the rhythm down, it's really easy to do. But sometimes initially getting that rhythm started sometimes can be difficult, but that's the tips that can really help you out. Another thing, guys, is you want to throw frogs all the time on braided line. I usually use 30 to 40 pound test Seagar smackdown braid for it. And I usually use about a 7 to 7 foot 2 inch rod. The one I personally use is that Megabass Perfect Pitch. I'll link that in the video description here too, if you guys want to get a good frog, and I'll link the line in there too, so you can get everything set up there. But a 7 foot or 7 foot 2 inch rod allows you you've got enough of short length on the rod to get that good twitching action. If you have a rod that's over about 7'2", the twitching becomes a little bit more lethargic because the rod's heavier and longer. So 7 foot 2 is a really good setup for that. Okay, that's a little bit about how to fish it. Now let's talk about where you want to throw it at and the conditions it works in. For me, there's a window of time that a frog works good, and that window is from April to about the end of June. After about June, I don't catch much on a frog. Frog fishing has not been very good for me in the fall time of the year, with the exception is if you have matted vegetation. If you have matted hydrilla and milfoil, then a frog can be good all summer long in through the fall. But if you do not have vegetation in the lake you're fishing, it sort of dies out by the end of June. So here's sort of what I look for between April to June. April and May, these fish are going to be on the shallow flat banks, anywhere those fish are sort of spawning around. That's going to be your best frog water. So I'll get them back into those areas that I think those fish are spawning in, and not necessarily that I'm trying to target spawning bass here, but there's just a lot of bass cruising in shallow during those situations, either getting ready to bed or building nests or nesting or garden fry, whatever. And just go down the bank with it, man. If you see a lay down log, throw it next to that lay down log. If you see a boat dock, throw it next to the corner of a boat dock. If you see some shade from an overhanging tree, skip it underneath that shade. Just fish whatever available targets that you have with that, because those fish are just cruising a lot. Now, in the June is a really good month to fish a frog, because June is usually when the perch start spawning in most impoundments across the lake. So you have bluegill and black perch and red ear sunfish and pumpkin seeds and all that type of stuff. They're spawning all summer long, and there's a big spawn that goes on in June. And these bass are still shallow and they're hungry, so they go up into these flatter areas where those perch spawn, and they're hunting bluegills to feed. And fishing a frog in those type of areas is a great way to catch them. Now those those perch will spawn in the exact places that a bass do, but usually a little bit shallower. So say for example, you've got a big cove where you've seen bass bedding in April. If you go back there in June, go back to the back part of the cove in the really, really shallow water. And if the water visibility is over about 2 foot clarity, you'll see these saucer-sized beds in the back of those coves, and those are perch beds. And throw the frog back in there anywhere around you see a bed. You don't have to have a bed, you can just fan cast back there. But the main thing is I like to throw the frog in June in the back ends of the flatter coves. It's a really good way to catch them with that. Colors just depend on, just whatever the fish want. One of the things that sort of stands out here, these are my two favorite colors. Sometimes either a black frog or like a chartreuse. The black frog is really good in a little bit cleaner water. So if you have water visibilities that are, say, over 2.5 foot or so, and especially if you've got a little bit brighter sunlight condition, like it's sunny or partly cloudy, a black frog fished around shade in those type of areas is really good. But if you have a little bit more off-colored water, say that water visibility is 1.5 foot to 2, and maybe you have some low light conditions like early in the morning or cloudy conditions, this chartreuse big gabot is the one I prefer there. So it looks like perch have a lot of orange and chartreuse on them, so it probably just resembles a perch. And one final thing, guys, is make sure that you trim your skirt back on any frog. Most frogs you buy from the factory, the skirts are way too long on them. And when you trim your frog skirt, guys, don't just come straight across like that. Here's a little tip. Put your scissors at about a 45-degree angle and cut them just like that. And by doing that, it makes those skirts flare out a little bit more. Don't have a problem if you got some uneven strands, because that's sort of what you want, some type of imperfection. But anyway, by cutting those skirts back like that, it'll prevent some short strikes on there. And also, guys, the hook set on a frog, do not set the hook on your frog until you actually feel the fish moving the frog away, or you see your line moving away. It's real tempting to, as soon as that fish blows up on a frog, to set the hook. Don't do that. You're thrown out there, you're working that frog, boom, one blows up on it. Don't do anything, just lower your rod tip down and watch your line. And when you see that frog disappear and you see your line start to move out, that's when you want to set the hook on it, because you'll lose a lot of fish if you just set it when they bite. So anyway, a few tips on frog fishing, guys. I hope it helps you, and we'll talk later.